Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire. Youth Worker Nation, today I'm here with Zoro.
Yes, indeed.
Is that how I pronounce it right?
Z-O-R-O, yeah, just like it sounds.
That's right.
One R, Z-O-R-O.
And are you any good with a sword at all?
No, I always wished I was. I'm good with a pair of drumsticks.
Yes, you
but
are.
I'm good with the sword of the word of the Lord. That's what God has really given me, is the word that he's given me inside is an inspirational, motivational, encouraging word. So that's my sword.
That's right. And you played for a lot of famous people.
Yes.
Give us that lineup.
Okay, so I'm a drummer, and I've spent many years touring and recording with Lenny Kravitz, The New Edition, Bobby Brown, Frankie, Valli and the Four Seasons, Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind and Fire, Marie Presley, Sean Lennon, tons and tons of people over the last 35 years all around the world. But my biggest heart is to encourage and inspire people to live out God's dream for their life.
So let's go back then, and we're going to go forward to that.
Okay.
Tell us about that one person, middle school, high school, college, that age group, 11 to 22. Was there one person that influenced your life? It doesn't have to be about Christianity at that time, but that inspired you to either be a drummer or inspired you about life at all?
Well, the very first person that inspired me about absolutely everything and was my biggest advocate and mentor and rallier was my single mother, who had the job of raising 7 children alone. So I grew up fatherless. We had 7 of us, 7 children that she had to raise alone. And she became the first one and my strongest advocate, who taught me how to dream and how to look past the circumstances. And we didn't grow up with a lot of family. I had no uncles or aunts, no grandparents, no cousins, no anybody. It was just a mother and her children. Next to her, the Lord was faithful to send a few people along the path. One would have been the pastor of a Baptist church that we had no money, and he paid for me to have a pair of shoes so that I could go to the summer church camp, the Baptist summer church camp.
How old were you at that time?
About 11, 12. And that's where I received the Lord, like, officially. Mm-hmm. He'd been in my heart before then, but that's where I went up to the altar. His name was Reverend Williamson. And when I look back on my life now, I realize how the Lord used him. I mean, they would have to come and pick us up. We didn't even have a car to go to the Bible studies and all that. I look back on my life, I'm very grateful for that man's impact on my life. Also, I was a little in the Big Brother, Big Sister program. So from 10 to 14, my mother signed me up for the Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and she signed me and my youngest brother and sister up for it. And there was a man by the name of Bill Large and his wife Beverly Large. They actually mentored all 3 of us.
Wow.
And they took us in for a good 4 or 5 years. I remained friends with Bill for 40 years until he died. And in fact, the very first professional drum set I ever played on was in the living room of Bill's house, because his son was a rock and roll drummer, his real son, and he had the drum set up there one day, and I just started banging on him. I never knew then I was going to be a drummer, but I thought that it was really cool that his son was a drummer. I thought, oh, that's cool. A 12-year-old impressionable kid. Actually, before he passed away, he had actually sent me, which I didn't know was ever in existence, he sent me the Super 8 footage of me hitting the drums for the first time. So it was this amazing thing. I've gone around the world and played with all these people, and I have the literal footage of the first time of me just banging on them as just a kid, not knowing and one day I would be a drummer. But so the Big Brother, Big Sister program changed my life.
Wow.
They became that couple was the first people that took us to the first football game, first pizza, first Chinese food, first fishing trip, first anything, because we had zero money.
What area of the country did you live in?
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles the first part of my life. I actually grew up in south central Los Angeles, known as Compton. And then we moved to Oregon. And when I received the Lord, it was up in Oregon, and that's where I joined the Big Brother, Big Sister program.
Wow.
So I actually speak for that organization, and I do fundraisers for them, and I do keynotes for them because they made an impact on my life. And then I had a band director who had an impact on me. who I guess saw my ability and talent and placed me in all the school bands, which kind of gave me a zeal for life. I was the kind of kid who didn't want to go to school at all. I missed more school than anybody in the history of the world, literally. I mean, I looked at my report cards from 35 years ago and found out I missed 62 days one year of school.
Oh, my goodness.
And 61 and a half the next year, high school. But when I got in the school band program, my absences went down to 21, which for me was good.
It was really good.
For me, it was an improvement
Right.
because I was a janitor at my own high school. And one day I was in the band room. Part of the job was to clean the band room. As I was cleaning the band room and vacuuming it and stuff, I could get the job done in an hour and 45 minutes. And the band director was never there. And one day, I would always jump on the drums and jam on him when he wasn't there. And one day I did that, but I didn't realize he was in his office with the door closed. And then he came out and startled me and said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm done cleaning. I was just hitting these drums. I didn't think it would matter. And he goes, "Wait right there." So he goes, he comes back 5 minutes later, which felt like 2 hours. He brings another guy. He goes, do what you're just doing again. I was, "What?" He goes, "Play the drums like you were playing." So I played. They turned around and looked at each other and said, "We need you in all the school bands. We need you in the jazz band, the marching band." And I had been trying to get in the school band program since the 4th grade and never got accepted because there was always too many drummers.
Yeah.
So being a janitor in my own high school is what opened the door. But when he saw my potential and saw my talent, that was a turning point in my life because it connected me to my destiny. So God's been faithful to send different key people like that in my life with the Father's heart, even though they weren't my own father. And my band director's name was Joe Cantolo. So I left that school in 1979 after a couple of years and graduated in Eugene, Oregon. 40 years later, I track him down because I want him to know what I've done with my life. And I find out where he's living and what he's doing, thinking he's never going to remember me. And he goes, "No, I know all about you. Other students have kept me abreast of your career." And he told me something that really touched me. He goes, I taught band for 40 years, he said. He goes, "Of all the guys I had," he goes, "you were the one with the most natural talent. And I wanted to help you develop that." And I honored him by writing about him in my books and articles. Anyway, so these are the things that you don't realize that you're doing when you're helping. And he didn't know at that time I was going through a real difficult time finding an identity. My mother was from Mexico City, and so we experienced a lot of racism in this little town in Oregon. And I felt very unwanted, unfit. And by him pulling me and seeing my potential, he didn't know how much of a hurting kid I was, but how it changed my life. And now, all these years later, I've impacted multitudes of lives because I love to mentor and teach and share the gospel and inspire people because of those few people that God sent along to water my path.
Well, you've spoken to youth pastors right now. You've spoken to pastors. I mean, all of us are hearing this. And teachers. One of my favorite people in my life was my band director. As a music major in college, and all I wanted to do is do that professionally. But God turned it around. I ended up in student ministry for 37 years.
There you go.
But I still do music.
Sure.
But guys like you, then God puts them on another path, says, "We're going to leave you in the music thing, and this is what you're going to do." So tell me about all these people in Christian world.
Yeah.
A lot of people go, "Oh, obviously he wasn't doing very well when he was with these other bands." Tell me your take on what God was doing with you when you were with the other bands. Was he using you there or what?
Oh, he's been using me all of my life. I mean, really, when I was a young boy, I wanted to be three things. I wanted to be a drummer, I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be a speaker and a teacher. And I have been all of those things for many years. So in all of those tours and all of my travels with famous people, the Lord has used me all over the place. And he's used me to be a light in a dark place. You don't need to preach to the choir. They're already saved. I played with many Christian artists too, but God really kept me in the secular kingdom because I was the only light and the only Jesus they're ever going to hear about. And I was very radical as far as I'm a radical evangelist in the sense that I look at every day as an opportunity to reach people for the gospel, and I'll use every means necessary. So by radical, I mean I bought 5,000 copies of one particular book that I liked, and I would travel with hundreds of them in the bay of the bus while I'm on tour with someone like Lenny Kravitz or Frankie Valli or Bobby Brown. And as I met fans that wanted to meet me and get my autograph and take a picture, I always use that as an opportunity to tell them about the Lord, hand them a book, pray for them. And I've been rolling that way for years. And God just keeps opening more and more doors and more platform. But I've never been afraid to go down. No door is too small and no door is too big.
Yeah.
I see all people as equal. The Lord has used me to minister to billionaires, famous people, and to people that the world's never going to know.
Well, and you know all those levels. And many times those billionaires were at that beginning like you've had.
Yeah.
And so they have different, you're related with a lot of people. Tell me about, because I know that we're all interested in your percussion life, and I love Lenny Kravitz music. I think the guy's brilliant.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, and so tell me, though, about your witness to those guys. Obviously, they loved you. You're a great drummer, so number one, they want that.
Yeah.
But number two, how did it affect them, and were they sometimes opposed to you talking to them, or how did that come about?
Yeah, well, first of all, in the case of someone like Lenny actually is a believer, which most people don't know that. But I've played off and on with him over the years. But like any believer, there's times when your walk is solid and strong, and there's times when you've drifted and wayward, and there's times when you're not walking at all, but the belief is still there.
Yeah.
So the Lord had used me at different key times in his life. And the last time he really used me was a turning point in Lenny's life, where I just really, he was already a believer, but I began to share with him, you need to make a deeper commitment to the Lord and a deeper commitment to giving, to doing something to give back to the kingdom, because God's really prospered you. I basically straight out told him, you need to tithe some of your money to kingdom purposes. He listened to me.
Wow.
And he had me help him find things that were worthy of sowing into for a season, and he did that. And so most people have always been receptive to me sharing what I've shared with them about the gospel and faith, because I've always done it out of a heart of love. They've seen the walk in my life first, and I'm not judgmental. I can hang with them even though they're partying and I'm not. I can still be on the bus with them, and I'm not stooping my nose down at them with a religious spirit, acting like I'm holier than you and I can't be seen with you or be next to you. I loved on them like Jesus would have. And they received that.
That's amazing, because a lot of times in church world, and even Christian teachers who are in public schools tend to put up this wall because they can't do what you did, or because it's safer not to. But Jesus, you're right. Jesus was right where you would be.
Yeah.
People were to say, well, what would Jesus do in your situation? Well, he would go with the people I'm with.
Yeah, and he would
there.
He would share the truth with them.
He was there.
He was there. He would share the truth with them, but he would still be stern, but he would still love them. He wouldn't condemn them. And so I don't think I've ever had anybody who wouldn't let me pray for them, because I've asked everybody I ever meet. I never had anybody turn me down, because they feel the genuine love of God in me, because it's genuine. I'm sincere.
Yeah.
My life for many years has been about one thing: leading as many people as possible to the kingdom of God, and empowering people, lifting people, educating them, teaching them things, which is why I wrote books and why I speak, and because the Lord wired me to be like two guys in the Bible, Barnabas and Paul. I'm a teacher, but I'm an encourager. Some people are just teachers. They can just teach you the facts, but they don't know how to encourage you. And
Yes.
some people only know how to encourage, but they don't have a lot to teach.
Yes.
So God kind of wired me in both of those ways, but he gave me a really radical, sort of courageous, bold spirit, but not in a way that offends people, but in a way where, look, I've shared the gospel with people many times, the same people that weren't receptive the first 10 times. And every time I see them, I'm sharing it at a different angle, and they still kind of listen. And then eventually, sometimes those walls break down. Those people, later they'll go, man, you tried to speak to me for years and I didn't listen to any of it. And then one day it all just clicked and made sense. But they said, mostly I remember that you loved me. You know, and that's the thing. I always tell people, look, I just want you to know the God that has done all these things in my life. I want you to know how much he loves you and how much he's set you apart for these great things. And all I want you to do is be blessed. I'm not trying to coerce you into something that's going to make your life horrible. I just want to introduce you to my friend Jesus, who changed my life, and he's really real. And he has your back. He's got your best interest at heart. He already knows all your crummy stuff. He already knows everything, but he still wants you. He wants to be your friend.
Give us your worst moment to date
So the worst moment was I was married when I was young, in my younger 20s. I was married for about 3.5 years, and my ex-wife, she had an affair and cheated on me, and of course, it completely broke my heart. Now, a lot of people assume that when I got divorced, they make assumptions because I'm the musician, so they're assuming, oh, he must have been cheating or whatever. But it was actually the opposite. I never cheated on her ever.
Yeah.
It was her who had an affair on me. I was willing to forgive her. I wanted to work it out, and she was unwilling to. So that was a horrible time in my life, going through that divorce. Also, shortly after that, we had 2 houses, one in Seattle and one in L.A. I took the L.A. one, she took the Seattle one. Shortly after that, the earthquake came, and then my house got toppled. I was at the top of the music game, and then everything just sort of started to erode underneath me, financially, physically, spiritually, mentally. But I had a very, very strong faith in the Lord at the time. But the takeaway from that was when I first got married, when I got married to her, I kind of married whoever I wanted to. I never actually consulted God. And I learned that David lost in battle the one time he didn't consult God before the battle. But I made a commitment to the Lord, and I said, the next time I get married, I will not marry anybody that you don't approve of, and I will seek you for that person. And I made some serious commitments. Best times of my life, there's been so many. Marrying my wife now, who I've been married to for 22, 23 years, the birth of my children. I turned 50, and just before I turned 50, I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, do something special for my 50th birthday. It was 6 months before it was happening. And I was saying, Lord, I've served you for a long time. I've labored hard. I just need you to do something that makes me feel that it's been worth it, and just I need some special touch from you. Well, God really did it, because prior to that birthday, I got invited to the White House, and I got invited to be honored at the White House with a group of other people who had mentored people and who had been honored for their sort of mentoring work. And it happened on my 50th birthday. And my daughter was younger then, and she said, your dream came true today, Daddy, but so did mine. Today I got to go to DC Cupcakes, which was the famous cupcake place that was on the Food Network.
Yes.
And so we had the best birthday. I went to the White House thing for that thing, and then we had lunch, and they brought me cupcakes, and they bought me some albums for my birthday. It was just a great, how God answered that prayer in the most random. And then we got to stay at this beautiful place where they put up politicians and dignitaries. It was just it was the greatest family trip into D.C. in June, and it was fantastic. But I have epic moments, many like that God has done. The release of each of my books, and winning different awards in the drumming world and drumming community.
Tell me some of the awards that you won.
Well, I've been, for many years, I was voted in all the drum magazine type readers polls as #1 R&B drummer in the world, and I was voted #1 educator because I've done thousands of drum clinics, and then I had #1 books in terms of I first started with books on the history of drumming, R&B, and gospel and soul, and the educational books and DVDs. And then I had a book out 3 or 4 years ago that came out called The Big Gig. The Big Gig, Big Picture Thinking for Success, and that won all kinds of awards. And my new book that just came out is like a milestone. It's a Christian book. It's called SOAR, SOAR, 9 Proven Keys for Unlocking Your Limitless Potential. And it's a book about how to live out God's dream for your life. It's a book about how to discover your gifts, how to develop them so that you can deploy them. And it's basically what everybody in the world needs to read, because we're here for those 3 reasons. We're here to discover what God gave us. We're here to develop what God gave us so that we can deploy what God gave us. But it's 9 life principles, and it's all the things that I learned throughout my life that the Lord has taught me about how to make a success of these dreams, which was the drumming, the speaking, the teaching, the writing. Those were my dreams.
Yes.
And it's practical, godly advice and stories and scriptures and quotes. It's just an inspirational book, but that's how the Lord wired me, to inspire.
Yeah. Well, did you do some of the clinics in universities, colleges?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Give me some colleges, universities that you were at. For educators' sake.
All of them, all the music schools, Berklee College of Music, University of Chicago, Miami, zillions of colleges, because each one of these colleges sometimes puts on drum percussion days.
Yeah.
They have.
What's one that you remember you thought, man, that was fun?
I did a big event. There's an organization called PAS, Percussive Arts Society, and they put on a yearly convention that's almost like this at NRB, but it's all just drummers.
Yeah.
And I remember the first year that I got invited to do the main keynote presentation performance was in Dallas, and it was outstanding. It's when my first drum book came out, and the place was packed to the gills, and the Spirit of God was on me, and it was anointed, and I just played like the best I'd played up to that point. And then I also played at an event called the Modern Drummer Festival. Now you can buy that. It's called Modern Drummer Festival 2005, and that was like sort of the most prestigious of the drum events. And so to get invited to it's a big deal, and then they film it and then they sell it for release. And when I played on the 2005 Modern Drummer Festival, that was one of the highlights of my career. And they filmed it beautifully, and the Lord was on my playing, and it felt anointed and fluid, and it was just an epic day.
And that's on YouTube, probably.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
The best one to see of you, probably.
Yeah, it's if you just go to YouTube, Zoro the Drummer, and the Zoro with one R. That'll be one of the ones that pops up pretty quick.
Yeah.
At Zoro at the Modern Drummer Festival.
Yeah, yeah.
For all your listeners out there, my ministry website is Zoro, Zoro with one R. ZoroMinistries.org is my ministry website. My drummer website is ZoroTheDrummer.com. But on my ministry website, I have tons of blogs there. I have hundreds of motivational quotes that God gives me that are original to inspire people. There's lots of TV and media interviews, but everything on there is to inspire. And for all the people that are, youth pastors and people mentoring young people, that's what I do. So there's a lot. The book is a great resource to give into the hands of those people. And then I have a lot of teaching things, and I have a lot of 1-minute messages that I do that are on video, that are on YouTube. Just 1 minute where I speak on a particular topic, and just to inspire people. So you can find that all, on the web.
Where are you living now? Are you still in
Los
LA?
Angeles?
Still
Los
LA?
Angeles, yeah.
What does it take for educators if they want you? Do you still do some of the drum clinics and stuff?
Yeah, I do drum clinics, and I speak
What does it cost them to because one thing that these teachers, especially high school, college level, want to know is what's the price? Do we have to go through a manager to hear that price, or
to do like a drum clinic like at a college? It's about like $2,000. And a lot of
about a high school, about the same?
About the same, and then they can raise the money in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll do like a fundraiser thing or whatever, and it's just that, and then paying for the travel for me to come there. But yeah, I do that all over the world.
That's great. My son did a lot in the Christian music world. He's 28 now. He's on his second album. He's a writer. We knew he was a writer when he was 15.
Okay.
But he's doing all this stuff in the pop world, and his first album was salvaged by his engineer friend in L.A.
Oh, wow.
And then they courted that guy to Nashville, and he said, Ryan, come up here and write. He's in Charlotte, Ryan is, but his buddy in Nashville. So his second one's there. So what would you say to Ryan about being that believer that's in the secular world, though, of music?
Let your light shine, man. If God's put you in there, that's what you're there for. Never change who you are. I've never changed who I am. I'm in the most secular industry in the world, but I've not let any of that change who I am. And if I'm the last guy standing, they're going to feel, first of all, they're going to feel my love. They're going to feel my light. They're not going to feel my judgment. They're going to feel the grace that Jesus would have given them. And that makes me very powerful in a dark world. And I can only be wherever God sends me. So I would say to him, be yourself, but be a man of excellence. Be a man who stands out, walk the walk, talk the talk, be available to be used by God. Because what we do is not as important as, in other words, I'm a drummer because God wired me to be a drummer. He's a songwriter because God wired him. That's just a gift. But the gift is meant to connect us to other people to then have impact on their life. Each of us are from a different tribe. We're going to connect with people from the tribe that we live in and work in. But we need all the tribal people to reach their people. So if you just make yourself available and realize the call is the same for everybody, to reach people for Christ, to reach people with the love of God. How we all do it is going to be personal with our own unique gifts and talents, but the commission is the same. So I just say, be like a Daniel, be like a Joseph, be God's man in a secular society. Bow down to no other God or no other person, but be stern, but be loving, and God will use you mightily, and be available to be, there's a chapter in the book, in the book that has the 9 life principles, and one of the principles is one of the most important. And all the principles are just one word. The first one is surrender. The second one is discover. The third one is dream. Then it's strategize. Then it's pursue. And believe. Believe is number 6. And bend. And by that I mean every vision that God gives to people, he never shows you exactly how it's going to happen. And a lot of times it's not how you think, and it comes with much discouragement. You get derailed and you get thrown off course. You've got to overcome despair, despondency, discouragement. But if you learn to bend, God will still get you to where you need to go. And you have to bend when you're disappointed and things didn't work out the way you thought they did. If you don't give up, God will still make a way for you to be a very powerful, effective person in his kingdom.
Zoro, I really appreciate your time. And Youth Worker Nation, we're talking to these guys, Zoro. So the one thing there's many things we're taking away from this, but one thing I would say to youth pastors, my takeaway from what you're saying is absolutely when you're dealing with students, whether you're an educator, whether you're a youth pastor or a volunteer worker, make sure that you're not trying to change who your students are.
Yeah, who they are.
But try to just let God do with what they are,
right,
and make them who he wants them to be.
That's exactly it. And it's the same.
Encourage them where they are.
Yeah, and that's the same thing I do with my own children. I've never wanted them to be what I want them to be. I only want them to be what God wants them to be. A job of any teacher or pastor or mentor or encourager is really simply to encourage people and to inspire them. And the way that we change the most is through those encounters with people that inspired us. The subject was irrelevant, whether it was your math teacher or your home economics teacher or the janitor or the pastor or the youth pastor. That's irrelevant. It's the encounter that mattered. That your job to minister to this young generation is to make them feel confident in who God made them to be and point them to who God is, but let them be who they're supposed to be. Don't try to turn them into something they're not, and just inspire and encourage them. And we do that mostly through our words.
Yes.
Words. There's lots of quotes in my book because I love the power of words. But one of the ones that I like the most is from Rudyard Kipling, the author of the Jungle Book, and he said, "Words are the most powerful drug known to mankind." And if you think about it, it's true. Everything we do or don't do in our life is formed by words, either spoken over us or we speak to ourselves. Everything we do is words. So the words we speak to other people carry life or death, and they're powerful. And so I've always been very cautious of speaking words of life to people as I encounter them, whether they're 2 years old or whether they're 90 years old, because we need encouragement. Every day you wake up, it's another day to be discouraged about something.
Yeah.
So every day you need some words from somewhere, whether you read them yourself from the Bible or motivational books or documentaries or friends, but we need the power of positive words. And that lines up with the Word of God.
That's great, Zoro. I appreciate it. Youth Worker Nation, we are out of here with Zoro the Drummer, and look him up.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Doug. What an honor. Privilege. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.